My name is Emma Thompson, and I am 30 years old. As I drove toward my childhood home, my palms were sweating against the steering wheel. 7 years of absence, and now I was returning with general insignia hidden in my bag. My family had always dismissed my intelligence career as nothing. Little did they know that tomorrow, at my father's company event, everything would change. In the car, I replayed a voicemail from Chief Sarah Carter. Emma, your work on Sentinel is game-changing. Tomorrow, show them who you are. Her words steeled my nerves, but the thought of facing my family's scorn made my stomach churn. I parked in the driveway, took a deep breath, and stepped out. Before I continue this story, I would love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, if you have ever been underestimated by family, this story will show you exactly how sweet vindication can taste. The moment I walked through the front door of my childhood home, I was struck by how nothing had changed. The same faded family photos lined the hallway, the same worn furniture occupied the living room, and the same judgment hung in the air. My small-town Idaho upbringing was preserved like a time capsule, right down to the outdated curtains my mother, Susan, had always refused to replace. As I stepped inside, Susan's voice cut through. Emma, you're late. I hope you didn't bring that agency nonsense into our home. Her words stung, but I forced a smile, determined not to let her bait me yet. Emma, you made it, my mother called from the kitchen, not bothering to come greet me. Her voice carried the same subtle disappointment it always had when addressing me instead of my brother Michael. I set my bag down and wandered through the house, trailing my fingers along familiar surfaces. My father, Robert, had worked at Apex Security Solutions for over 30 years, climbing from technician to senior executive through dedication and networking. Your father's preparing for tomorrow's big meeting, Susan added, chopping vegetables. Unlike some, he knows what real success looks like. The jab was clear, but I bit my tongue, knowing tomorrow would rewrite their narrative. Our family revolved around his career success and the shadow it cast for my brother to follow. Your brother will be here soon, my mother informed me as I entered the kitchen. He just got promoted again, senior program director now. The pride in her voice was unmistakable, the kind she never used when discussing my career. That is great, I replied. Oh, it's more than great, Susan snapped. Michael's practically running Apex now. What do you have to show for yourself, Emma? Still playing spy? Her words cut deeper than I expected, but I kept my composure, clutching the memory of my insignia. The words feeling mechanical. After years of practice, I will have to congratulate him. My mother continued preparing dinner, chattering about Michael and his wife Laura, their new house, and all the corporate accomplishments that made them the golden children of our family. Not once did she ask about my life or career. As she rattled on, I caught her glancing at me, expecting a reaction. You could have been like Laura, she said. Settled, successful. Instead, you chose whatever it is you do. I nodded silently, my resolve hardening. They'd see soon enough. I excused myself and headed upstairs to my old bedroom. Like everything else, it remained frozen in time. Cheerleading trophies from high school, academic awards, and college acceptance letters still decorated the walls and shelves. My parents had preserved everything from before I made my disappointing choice to join Nina's instead of pursuing a finance degree. On the desk, I found an old photo of me and Michael as kids, smiling together. It felt like a lifetime ago. You used to be so promising, Susan's voice echoed in my mind from years past. I shook it off, focusing on the mission ahead. What they did not display were any acknowledgements of my intelligence career, no photos of my swearing-in ceremony, no shadow boxes of achieved ranks, no newspaper clippings about missions or promotions. In their minds, I had wasted my potential the moment I chose service over corporate success. As I unpacked, I found a letter from Sarah tucked in my bag. They don't define you, Emma. You've earned this, own it. Her encouragement fueled me, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to their approval. I sat on my childhood bed, running my hand over the familiar quilt, remembering the night I told them about my NSA scholarship. My father had stared at me with such disappointment that I almost changed my mind. "The intelligence agency is for people without options, Emma," he had said. "You're smarter than that. You're throwing away your future," Susan had added, her voice laced with pity. I'd stood firm, but their words haunted me. Now, holding my insignia, I felt a surge of defiance. They'd underestimated me for too long. Even then, they had been grooming Michael to follow in my father's footsteps at Apex. My brother had eagerly embraced the plan, thriving on the favoritism, and using every opportunity to remind me how much more successful he would be. I opened my suitcase and carefully removed the garment bag containing my formal attire. Tomorrow, Apex Security Solutions would be hosting their annual leadership conference, and my father had mentioned that the CEO, Catherine Reynolds, would be visiting their branch. "Catherine's expecting big things," Robert had said at dinner. "Michael's her star. Not sure why you're even here, Emma." His casual dismissal lit a fire in me. What my family did not know was that I was now the intelligence liaison for the $2,500,000,000 zero-cents defence contract between the NSA and Apex, a position I had earned through years of dedicated service and expertise. My finger traced over the senior operative insignia, achieved faster than almost anyone in my division's history. I imagined Michael's smug grin faltering tomorrow when he saw me in my official capacity. "You'll never be anything," he'd said last night. The memory fueled my determination to prove him wrong. At 30, I was one of the youngest senior operatives in the modern NSA, specialising in counterintelligence systems, the very technology Apex was contracted to develop. I carefully hung up my attire in the closet, making sure it was hidden behind some old clothes. For tonight, I would endure one more family dinner of dismissal and condescension. As I hid the attire, I whispered to myself, tomorrow they'll see, not just a title, but power. The thought of their shock gave me a quiet thrill. Tomorrow would be different. The doorbell rang, announcing Michael's arrival. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders like I was heading into a mission, and went downstairs to face my family. The dining room felt smaller than I remembered, constricted by the oversized personalities gathered around the table. My brother Michael had arrived with his wife Laura, both dressed in expensive business casual attire that screamed corporate success. Michael smirked as he saw me. "Still in jeans, Emma? No uniform tonight?" His tone dripped with mockery, but I met his gaze evenly, knowing my moment was coming. My cousin Jessica had also been invited, which was no surprise. She worked as a marketing director at a prestigious firm and was often held up as another example of what I should have aspired to be. "Emma, you remember Jessica?" my mother said, as if we had not grown up together. "She just closed a multi-billion-dollar deal for her firm." "Hi, Jessica." "You look tired, Em," Jessica said softly, her kindness undercut by pity. "Still chasing secrets?" I smiled tightly, refusing to let their assumptions shake me. I said, giving her a genuine smile. Unlike my immediate family, Jessica had always been kind to me, even if she did not understand my choices. "It is good to see you, Em," she replied, giving me a quick hug. "Been way too long." The initial conversation remained pleasant as we served ourselves from the dishes my mother had prepared, but the pleasantness faded fast. "Emma, you're so quiet," Laura chimed in, her smile patronising. "Nothing exciting to share from your job?" The table went silent, waiting for my response. My father, Robert, sat at the head of the table, occasionally checking his phone for work emails despite my mother's disapproving glances. "So, Dad," Michael began, predictably steering the conversation toward himself, "I wanted to tell you about the new project I'm heading up. Catherine personally selected me to lead the team." My father beamed with pride. "That's my boy," Robert said, clapping Michael's shoulder. "Unlike some, you've made us proud." The pointed glance at me wasn't missed by anyone. "That is my boy. Catherine Reynolds does not hand out responsibilities lightly. You must have really impressed her." "Well," Michael continued, shooting me a glance to make sure I was paying attention. "It is the same project you have been working on for years," Catherine says. My fresh perspective might help move things along faster. Then, my mind danced to something different. The sister brain is much more open than your sister's dead-end career, Susan muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. I gripped my fork, channeling my anger into silence. I bit my tongue, knowing that the project was actually the NSA contract I was now overseeing. If only they knew how much authority I actually had over the success or failure of Michael's new position. My mother, Susan, immediately jumped in, eager to showcase Michael's achievement. Tell them about the staff you are managing now, dear. Yes, tell us how you're outshining everyone, I said, my tone neutral but my eyes locked on Michael's. He faltered for a split second, sensing my challenge. Michael puffed up. 15 direct reports, including 2 senior analysts who have been with the company for over 20 years. They were not too happy about reporting to someone younger, but they got over it when they saw my results. That is wonderful, my mother cooled, then turned to me with a thin smile. And you, Emma? Still fetching coffee for your bosses? The table laughed, except Jessica, who looked uncomfortable. I smiled calmly, letting their ignorance fuel my resolve. Emma, how is your job going? Are you still at the same level? The dismissive way she said job rather than career was not lost on me. Things are going well, I replied simply, not willing to reveal my promotion yet. Still a junior operative or whatever? My father asked vaguely, not even knowing the correct progression of NSA ranks. You never did explain what you do, Robert added, his tone skeptical. Probably because it's not worth explaining. I sipped my water, counting the hours until tomorrow. Something like that, I answered, taking a bite of mashed potatoes to avoid elaborating. You know, my mother interjected, Jessica just bought a beautiful new condo downtown. 4 bedrooms with a gorgeous view of the valley. Jessica looked uncomfortable at being used as a comparison point again. It is really not that impressive, she said graciously. Oh, don't be modest. Emma could learn from you. Stability, not whatever she's doing. I kept my gaze steady, hiding the storm inside. Just good timing in the market. Still, my mother continued, it is nice to see young people establishing themselves properly, building equity instead of moving around every few years. The dig at my intelligence lifestyle was clear. I had lived in 5 different states and 3 countries in the last 10 years, something my mother considered unsettled and immature. Moving around like a nomad, Michael added, smirking. No wonder you've got nothing to show for it. I let the comment slide, knowing my reveal would hit harder. Speaking of tomorrow, my father said, thankfully changing the subject, the CEO is coming to review our branch. It is a big deal. Catherine Reynolds does not visit regional offices often. I have my presentation ready, Michael boasted. Catherine already emailed me personally to say she is looking forward to my innovation proposal. She'll see a real leader in you, Susan said, beaming, not someone wasting time on pointless missions. My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent, picturing their faces tomorrow. Is there anything special planned for the visit? I asked innocently. My father nodded. Full staff meeting, project reviews, and a special announcement about the NSA contract. Some senior operative is supposed to come as the agency liaison, but I doubt they will send someone that high-ranking. Probably just some junior operation who will be impressed by our operation. They'll be out of their depth, Michael scoffed. Unlike me, they won't understand Apex's vision. I nearly laughed, knowing I was that operative. I suppressed a smile. That sounds interesting. Not really, Michael scoffed. Agency types never understand the business side of things. They just follow orders and check boxes. Michael, Jessica said with a frown, that is not fair. But my brother was on a roll now. Come on, we all know the truth. The NSA is a fallback career. A fallback for failures, Susan added, her eyes on me. You could have been so much more, Emma. My calm facade held, but my pulse raced with anticipation. People who cannot cut it in the real competitive world hide behind clearances and protocols. My mother nodded in agreement. We always knew you were so bright, Emma. That is why it was such a disappointment when you chose that path. What exactly do you think I do in the NSA? I asked, keeping my voice level. Push papers, follow directives. Probably fetching data for someone actually important, Michael said, laughing. No offense, Em, but you're not cut out for the big leagues. I smiled thinly, counting down to my moment. My father shrugged. Important work, sure, but not exactly challenging for someone with your potential. You will never be anything there, Michael laughed. 12 years from now, you will still be taking orders while I am running my own division. The words stung despite my accomplishments. Years of therapy had helped me recognize that my family's approval should not matter anymore, but old wounds ran deep. You're just jealous, I said softly, testing the waters. Michael's laugh died. Jealous? Of you? Don't make me laugh. The tension crackled, but I held back. I think Emma made a choice that works for her, Jessica attempted to defend me. A waste is what it is, my mother sighed dramatically. All that potential. Remember how all your teachers said you could run a company someday? I pushed food around my plate as they continued dissecting my supposed failures and missed opportunities. You could have been a CEO, Susan said, shaking her head. Instead, you're what, a glorified clerk? I let the insult roll off, knowing my truth would silence them soon. The conversation moved on to Michael's upcoming vacation to Bali, Laura's promotion at her consulting firm, and Jessica's investment portfolio. No one asked about my recent mission or the specialised training I had completed. As dessert was served, my father mentioned again how important tomorrow's meeting was for his career. This could make or break my career, Robert said, his tone heavy. Unlike some, I've worked hard for this. The dig was unmistakable, but I focused on the pie, savouring the thought of their shock. 30 years I've put into Apex. This contract could be what finally gets me to vice president. I nodded sympathetically, knowing that tomorrow would change everything, though not in the way he expected. Later that night, I retreated to my childhood bedroom, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "They're clueless. Tomorrow's going to be intense." She replied instantly, "Let them underestimate you. It'll make the reveal sweeter." I smiled, feeling ready. From down the hall, I could hear my parents still praising Michael's achievements. He really is exceptional, my mother was saying. Catherine would be foolish not to see his potential for senior leadership. I closed my eyes, fingers tracing the senior operative insignia I had slipped from my bag. Tomorrow could not come soon enough. As I lay in bed, I rehearsed my opening remarks for the meeting, each word a weapon to dismantle their misconceptions. This wasn't just a job, it was my legacy. Sleep evaded me as I stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to my ceiling, relics from a childhood when my potential had been measured differently. Back then, before Michael started working at Apex, before my decision to join the NSA, my parents had seen something in me, but that changed the moment I chose a different path than the one they had planned. I remembered Michael's taunt from high school, "You'll never outshine me, Em." Tomorrow, I'd show him how wrong he was. I remembered sitting at this same dining table during my sophomore year of college, an essay brochure in hand, explaining how the program would pay for my education and provide a career path I found meaningful. The NSA? My father had asked, his face contorting as if I had suggested becoming a street performer. "You're betraying our family's legacy," he'd said, his voice cold. "Apex is where you belong." I'd fought back tears, but I never wavered. "That is for people who cannot get real jobs, Emma." "It is a real job," I had countered, "and it is what I want." My mother had exchanged worried glances with my father. "But what about law school or business? You always said you wanted to work at Apex someday." No, they had always said that. I had merely nodded along, trying to be the daughter they wanted. "You'll regret this," Susan had warned. "You'll end up alone with nothing." I'd proven her wrong, but the hurt lingered. When I stood my ground, the subtle undermining began. My achievements in NS went unacknowledged. My swearing in, as a junior operative, was attended only by Jessica, who drove 8 hours to be there when my parents suddenly had unavoidable work commitments. My father had Michael's promotion to junior manager at Apex framed, while my agency portrait remained in a drawer. We didn't think it was important, Susan had said when I asked why they didn't come. The memory still burned, but it also drove me. Yet despite their dismissal, my career flourished. My aptitude for systems analysis and counterintelligence had been recognized early. By 25, I had been promoted to mid-level operative and assigned to a specialized unit developing defensive protocols against emerging cyber threats. By 28, I had reached senior analyst after leading a task force that identified and neutralized a sophisticated attack on national infrastructure, saving countless classified documents and potentially lives. My team had toasted to our success, but I'd wish my family could have seen it. As Sarah Carter had been my first true mentor, seeing potential in me that my family refused to acknowledge. "Thompson," she had said after a particularly grueling training exercise, "you think differently than the others. That is going to take you places." Under her guidance, I learned to trust my instincts and leverage my unique perspective. "You're not just smart, Emma," Sarah had told me. "You're relentless. That's why you'll lead one day." Her faith in me was my anchor. When a routine security audit revealed patterns others missed, Sarah encouraged me to pursue it further. The investigation ultimately uncovered a coordinated attempt to breach multiple defense systems. The operation I subsequently led earned me an early promotion to senior analyst and put me on the agency's radar. "You've got a gift," Sarah had said, pinning my new insignia. "Don't let anyone, not even family, dim your light." Her words echoed as I prepared for tomorrow's showdown. Sarah, by then a division chief, had personally recommended me for the Apex liaison position. "They are developing next-generation security protocols," she had explained. "We need someone who understands both the technical and strategic implications. Someone who can speak the language of both agency and corporate worlds." You're the only one I trust with this," she'd added, her confidence bolstering mine. I'd taken the role knowing it would bring me face to face with my family's doubts. When she pinned the senior operative insignia to my attire just 4 weeks ago, the ceremony was attended by agency directors and officials, but not my family. I had not even told them about the promotion. Years of dismissal had taught me to stop seeking their approval. Operative Thompson had said afterward, "I hope you realize what an achievement this is." "I do," I'd replied, "but my family won't until they see it." Sarah had smirked. "Then make 'em see." Honest senior operative in the counterintelligence division's history. I did realize it, but tomorrow would be the first time my family would understand what I had truly accomplished. The Apex contract was massive, $2,500,000,000, 0 cents, for developing advanced counterintelligence systems for national applications. As liaison, I had final approval on all major decisions, technical specifications, and budget allocations. I'd spent nights poring over Apex's proposals, spotting flaws Michael's team missed. Tomorrow, I'd hold them accountable. In the most literal sense, I would be overseeing my father's and brother's work. The irony was almost too perfect. For years, they had belittled my career choice, and now I held significant influence over the project that could determine their professional futures. I got out of bed and removed my attire from the garment bag. The formal black fabric was immaculate, silver pins gleaming even in the dim light of my childhood bedroom. They held the jacket up, imagining their faces when they saw me in it, their dismissal shattered by my authority. I ran my fingers over the rows of citations and medals, each representing missions, achievements, and sacrifices my family knew nothing about. The senior operative insignia caught the light as I turned the jacket in my hands. I remember my father once saying, "Clearances do not mean anything in the real world, Emma. Out here, it is about what you can do, not what title they give you. Titles are earned," I whispered to the empty room, my voice steady. "And I've earned this one." He would learn tomorrow that, in my world, this rank was earned through proving exactly what I could do, repeatedly, under pressure and against overwhelming odds. I meticulously inspected every detail of my attire, checking for loose threads or spots that needed attention. The ritual calmed me, the familiar routine grounding me against the emotional turbulence of being home. I practiced my posture, standing tall as if addressing a room of generals. This wasn't just a meeting, it was my battlefield. By the time dawn broke, I had moved past the hurt of yesterday's dinner. The attire hung ready. My hair was precisely pinned according to regulation, and my resolve was firm. Today, Operative Emma Thompson would report for duty, not the disappointing daughter they thought they knew. I dressed with practiced efficiency, each pin and button placed with precision. I looked in the mirror, seeing not just an operative, but a woman who'd fought for her place. "This is for me," I said aloud, ready to claim my moment. The person in the mirror reflected confidence, authority, and purpose. No trace remained of the insecure girl who had once desperately sought her parents' approval. As I pinned the senior operative insignia to my collar, I reminded myself that this moment was not about revenge. It was about finally allowing my family to see me as I truly was, for better or worse. "They'll see the real Emma," I murmured, adjusting my collar, not their version of me. If they could not accept my success on my terms, that would be their loss, not mine. I checked my watch. A gift from Chief Sarah. It was time. The company event would begin in an hour, and I needed to arrive early to coordinate with the security team. Downstairs, I heard my parents and Michael preparing to leave separately. They had no idea I would be joining them, much less in what capacity. I texted Sarah one last time, heading in, "Wish me luck." Her reply was instant. "You don't need luck. You've got this." I waited until I heard their cars pull away before heading downstairs and out to my own vehicle. The drive to Apex Security Solutions took less than 20 minutes. I used the time to center myself, reviewing key points about the contract I would be discussing today. This was not just about showing my family who I had become. It was about proving I belonged at the top, not just to them, but to myself. I'd fought too hard to let doubt creep in now. It was about ensuring a critical national security project received the oversight it required. As I pulled into the reserved parking spot marked Agency Liaison, I straightened my attire one last time. The weight of responsibility settled comfortably on my shoulders, far more natural than the weight of family expectations ever had. I stepped out of the car, my boots clicking on the pavement, each step a declaration of my earned authority. It was time to step into the role I had earned, regardless of who might be watching. The Apex Security Solutions headquarters loomed before me, a gleaming monument to corporate success and national security partnership. The glass and steel structure housed some of the most advanced technology development in the country, including the counterintelligence systems I was now responsible for overseeing. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was my stage, and I was ready to perform. Security at the entrance was tight, as expected for a facility with multiple classified projects. I approached the guard station, where two security officers straightened immediately upon noticing my attire and rank. "Good morning, operative," the first guard said, instantly recognizing the senior operative insignia on my shoulder. "May I see your identification, please?" I presented my agency ID and project authorization. The guard's eyes flicked to my insignia, respect evident. "Welcome, Operative Thompson. You're cleared for priority access." Operative Emma Thompson, liaison for Project Sentinel. The guard's eyes widened slightly as he processed my clearance. "Yes, ma'am, you are expected in the main conference room. Would you like an escort?" "That will not be necessary. I know the way." In truth, I had studied the building layout extensively before arriving. As I walked through the security checkpoint, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Employees whispered, their curiosity palpable. "Is that the liaison?" one muttered. I kept my gaze forward, unwavering. Agency operatives of my rank rarely visited regional offices, and certainly not ones as young as me. Employees stopped mid-conversation as I passed, some nodding respectfully, others clearly curious about my presence. The elevator carried me to the executive floor, where the day's meetings would take place. As the doors opened, I overheard two staff members. "She's so young for a senior operative. Must be brilliant." I allowed myself a small smile, their words a quiet validation. As the doors opened, I came face to face with my brother Michael, who was reviewing notes on a tablet. His eyes flicked up casually, then widened in shock as he registered both my presence and my attire. "Emma, what are you doing here? And why are you wearing that?" Confusion and the beginning traces of alarm crossed his face as he noticed the senior operative insignia. "What's this costume, Em?" he sneered, trying to regain control. "Playing dress up for Catherine?" I held his gaze, unflinching. "Good morning, Michael," I replied professionally. "I am here for the project review." Before he could respond, my father turned the corner, engaged in conversation with two other executives. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion to concern in rapid succession. "Emma, what is going on? Why are you in attire?" He glanced around nervously, clearly worried about what his colleagues might think. "Dad," I acknowledged with a nod. "You'll understand soon enough," I said, my voice calm but laced with steel. I was just about to head into the conference room to prepare. "The meeting starts in 20 minutes. "Correct." The executives with my father were staring at my rank insignia with growing recognition. One of them, Margaret Collins from Legal, according to her name badge, stepped forward. "Operative, it is an honour to have you here." "We've read your reports," she added, her tone deferential. "Your work on Sentinel is exceptional." My father's confusion deepened, his world tilting. "We were not aware you would be attending in person today." My father's face paled. "Operative Emma, what is this about?" I maintained my professional demeanour, aware of the growing audience in the hallway. "I believe CEO Reynolds will explain everything during the meeting. If you will excuse me," as I walked toward the conference room. I could hear the whispered conversations erupting behind me. "That's Robert's daughter?" one executive whispered. "How did he not know she's running this show?" The shock was spreading. Years of agency training had taught me to maintain composure under pressure, but I could not deny the small satisfaction I felt at their shock. The conference room was already being prepared by staff, setting up presentation materials and refreshments for the high-level meeting. The young woman arranging water pitchers nearly dropped one when she saw me enter. "Operative Thompson," she stammered. "We've set up your briefing materials as requested." I nodded, impressed by their efficiency but focused on the task ahead. "Oh, Operative, we were not told you would be here in person. Do you need anything special set up?" "Everything looks fine, thank you," I replied, taking a seat at the position reserved for the agency liaison. Over the next 15 minutes, various executives and team leaders filtered into the room. Many introduced themselves to me with a deference that contrasted sharply with how my family had treated me just the previous evening. "Your reputation precedes you," one said, shaking my hand. "Apex is lucky to have you." I smiled, but my eyes were on Michael. Several mentioned being surprised to meet me in person, as they had expected a video conference. My father and brother entered the room together, both looking unsettled. They took seats far from me, occasionally shooting confused glances in my direction. I focused on reviewing my notes, not giving them the satisfaction of an explanation, before the meeting officially began. Michael leaned toward Robert, whispering, "She's bluffing, right? This can't be real." I caught his eye and held it, letting him squirm. At precisely 9:30 a.m., the door opened and CEO Catherine Reynolds entered, flanked by her executive team. Catherine was a formidable presence, known for her direct approach and strategic brilliance. She had led Apex to become one of the top security contractors in the nation. The room fell silent as she scanned the attendees, her gaze stopping when it reached me. "Operative Thompson," she said, her voice warm but commanding. "Your presence elevates this meeting." Michael's jaw tightened noticeably. A smile of recognition spread across her face as she changed direction, heading straight for my position. "Operative Thompson," she said warmly, extending her hand. "What an unexpected pleasure to have you here in person. I thought we were scheduled for a video conference." I stood and shook her hand firmly. I was in town visiting family and thought this would be a good opportunity to review the project in person. Catherine nodded appreciatively. "A bold move," she said, her eyes gleaming. "I like it." Excellent initiative. Your presence will certainly make today's discussions more productive. She turned to address the room, her voice carrying authority. For those who may not be aware, Operative Thompson is our agency liaison for Project Sentinel. She will be overseeing the implementation of the new security protocols and has final approval authority for all technical specifications. Michael's face drained of colour, his tablet slipping slightly in his hands. Robert stared, his mouth agape. I could see my father's jaw literally drop from across the room. Michael was staring at me as if seeing a stranger. "Good morning, Operative." Catherine continued with a respectful nod. "I look forward to your insights today." The meeting began with project updates from various team leaders. Each presenter addressed their comments to both Catherine and me, acknowledging my authority over the agency aspects of the project. "Operative Thompson, your input on encryption protocols was critical," one leader noted, further unsettling my family. When technical questions arose about integration with existing security systems, all eyes turned to me for answers. I provided detailed analysis and clear directives, drawing on my years of specialised experience. With each comment I made, I could see my father and brother exchanging incredulous looks, their worldview visibly crumbling. "How does she know all this?" Robert whispered to Michael, who shook his head dumbfounded. I kept my focus, delivering precise answers that commanded the room. When it came time for Michael to present his portion, his normally confident voice wavered. "As the team lead for system integration, I have developed a streamlined approach too," he faltered as he caught my eye. "Please continue, Mr. Thompson," I encouraged professionally, as if he were any other presenter and not my brother who had laughed at my career choice just 12 hours earlier. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he muttered under his breath, but I kept my expression neutral, professional. Michael stumbled through his presentation, clearly thrown by my presence and position. When he finished, I asked several pointed technical questions that exposed gaps in his planning, not out of malice, but because the project demanded thorough scrutiny. "These are important considerations that need to be addressed before we can approve this phase," I concluded. "Your team's oversight on redundancy protocols is concerning," I added, my tone firm. Michael's face reddened as the room took note. "Please submit revised specifications by the end of the week." My father watched this exchange with a stunned expression, witnessing his son being held accountable by his daughter, the daughter he had dismissed for years as wasting her potential. As the meeting progressed, it became increasingly clear to everyone in the room that I possessed an expertise and authority that commanded respect. Catherine leaned over, whispering, "You're tougher than I expected, Thompson." "Well done," I nodded, feeling the weight of her approval. My family was seeing for the first time what my colleagues and superiors in the NSA had recognised years ago. By the time Catherine closed the meeting, 3 hours later, the power dynamics had been irrevocably altered. "Operative Thompson will remain on site through tomorrow to conduct security assessments," she announced. "Her evaluations will shape this project's future," she added, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Michael's eyes darted to me, panic setting in. "I expect everyone to provide her with whatever information and access she requires. This project is critical to national security and to Apex's future." As the room cleared, Catherine approached me again. "Operative, I must say your reputation is well-deserved. Chief Carter speaks highly of you, but seeing you in action today confirms everything I have heard." "Thank you, Catherine," I replied. "I'm here to ensure Sentinel succeeds." She smiled, unaware of the family drama unfolding. From the corner of my eye, I could see my father hovering nearby, clearly eager to speak with me, but uncertain how to approach. The moment of revelation had arrived, and there would be no going back. The conference room slowly emptied, leaving only my family and a few senior executives who were engaged in conversation with Catherine Reynolds. Robert's hands fidgeted, his usual confidence gone. "She's my daughter," he muttered to an executive as if testing the words. My father hovered awkwardly at the edge of the group, visibly struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Michael stood beside him, his earlier confidence replaced by confusion and dawning realization. Catherine gestured me over to join her small circle, unaware of the family drama unfolding. Operative Thompson, let me introduce you properly to our senior team. They're already buzzing about you, she whispered, her tone conspirational. You've made quite an impression. I nodded, ready for the next act. Some of them you may already know from project documentation, but it is always better to connect in person. I nodded professionally and joined her. She placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, a gesture of collegial respect that would have been unthinkable between a CEO and a junior team member. Everyone, this is Operative Emma Thompson, the agency's primary liaison for Project Sentinel. She's the best we've worked with, Catherine added, her voice carrying across the room, amplifying my presence. Operative Thompson has been instrumental in developing the security frameworks that will form the backbone of our system. The Senior Vice President of Engineering, a man named David Harris, extended his hand. Operative, your reputation precedes you. Your paper on adaptive countermeasures against quantum threats was revolutionary. We've built our entire strategy around it, he added, his admiration clear. Michael's eyes narrowed, his ego bruised by the praise I received. We have implemented several of your recommendations already. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I appreciate the practical application of theoretical work, I replied, acutely aware of my father and brother watching this exchange with disbelief. Catherine continued the introductions until she reached my father. And, of course, you must know Robert Thompson, our Director of Regional Operations. He's been a cornerstone here, Catherine said, oblivious to the tension. Robert's face flushed, caught off guard. Robert has been with Apex for nearly 3 decades. An awkward silence fell as everyone registered our shared last name. Catherine looked between us, realization dawning on her face. Thompson, are you related? Before I could answer diplomatically, my father stepped forward. She is my daughter, he said, his voice a complex mixture of confusion and a new emotion I had never heard from him before. Hey, I didn't know, he stammered, his authority crumbling in front of his peers. Was it respect? Your daughter? Catherine looked genuinely surprised. Robert, you never mentioned your daughter was Operative Thompson, the Operative Thompson who has been overseeing our biggest agency contract. My father struggled to find words. I was not aware of Emma's current position. Catherine turned to me with a questioning look. You kept this quiet, she said, half amused. Your family must be stunned. I nodded, letting the moment sink in for them. I maintained my professional demeanour despite the personal undercurrents. My family and I have not had much opportunity to discuss my career progression, I explained simply. Michael, unable to contain himself any longer, stepped forward. You cannot be serious. You are the operative everyone has been talking about. The one who's been tearing my proposals apart for months, he added, his voice bitter. I met his gaze, unflinching, my authority undeniable. The one with final approval on the entire project. Yes, I confirmed. I have been overseeing Project Sentinel for the past 8 months, since my promotion to senior operative. 8 months? My father repeated, his voice hollow. You have been a senior operative for 8 months and never told us? Catherine looked increasingly uncomfortable as she realized she had stumbled into family tension. This is unexpected, she said, trying to lighten the mood. But it explains your brilliance, Emma. Well, this is certainly unexpected. Operative Thompson, perhaps you would like to explain your role directly to the team. Since you are here in person, we should take full advantage. I nodded gratefully for the professional redirect. Of course. Project Sentinel represents a $2,500,000,000, 0 cents, investment in next-generation counterintelligence infrastructure. I stepped forward, my voice steady. This project is the future of national security, and I'm here to ensure it's flawless. My family's eyes widened, their reality shifting. As I spoke, I could see the expressions on the executives' faces shift from curiosity to genuine respect. My detailed knowledge of both the technical aspects and strategic implications demonstrated exactly why I held my position. All major design decisions, budget allocations, and implementation strategies require my approval before proceeding, I continued, the words landing heavily in the room. This includes staffing decisions for key positions, including yours, Michael, I added pointedly, watching him flinch as the room absorbed my authority. Michael paled at this last point, undoubtedly remembering his boast about leading a new team on the project. Catherine nodded approvingly as I finished my overview. As you can all see, we are fortunate to have Operative Thompson guiding this project. Her expertise is unmatched and her authority in this matter is absolute. The executives nodded in agreement, several making notes. She's a force, David Harris whispered to a colleague, loud enough for Michael to hear, his jaw clenched. My father sat rigid in his chair, his expression unreadable. In fact, Catherine continued, Operative Thompson will be conducting performance evaluations of all team leads over the next 2 days to assess our progress and resource allocation. Michael's face went from pale to ashen. Just last night he had laughed about my career amounting to nothing, and now I would be evaluating his performance evaluations, he muttered, his voice barely audible. She's judging me now? I kept my expression impassive, professional. As the meeting concluded, Catherine pulled me aside. Operative, I had no idea Robert was your father. This must be quite a proud moment for your family. I offered a diplomatic smile. It is certainly a significant moment. Well, they should be extremely proud. Your work has been exceptional. I have told Robert many times how fortunate we are to have such a strong agency partner on this project. They're learning that now, I replied, my tone neutral, but my eyes on my family. My father overheard this exchange as he approached, his expression now a mixture of confusion and what appeared to be dawning regret. Emma, he began, struggling with how to address me in this context. We need to talk. Of course, I replied professionally. I have a brief meeting with the security team, then I can meet you in your office at 11:30 a.m. You're giving me orders now? He said, half joking, half stunned. I nodded, letting the moment speak for itself. He nodded mutely, unaccustomed to taking scheduling directions from me. As the executives filed out, I could hear them murmuring about the unexpected revelation. Did you know Robert's daughter was Operative Thompson? No wonder she rose so quickly with connections like that. Actually, I heard she refused any family connections. She's earned every bit of this, David Harris said loudly, his voice carrying. Michael's shoulders slumped, his bravado gone. He did it all on merit. The last comment from David Harris carried clearly across the room, causing my father to stop in his tracks. The implication was clear. I had achieved my position not because of my family connections, but despite their lack of support. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it, the opportunity for long overdue understanding. At precisely 11:30 a.m., I knocked on Robert's office door, my posture military precise, ready for the confrontation that awaited. I knocked on the door of my father's office. Through the glass partition, I could see not just my father, but my mother and brother as well. Someone must have called my mother to come to the office after the morning's revelations. Enter, my father called, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. I stepped inside, still in full attire, and closed the door behind me. Susan's eyes widened as she took in my insignia. Emma, what is all this? She demanded, her voice trembling with confusion. My mother, Susan, sat perched on the edge of a chair, her expression fluctuating between confusion and something that looked almost like fear. Michael stood by the window, arms crossed defensively across his chest. Please sit down, my father offered, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I'm not here to sit, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm here to set things straight. Michael's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in power. Thank you, but I prefer to stand, I replied automatically, adopting the at-ease position, hands clasped behind my back. An uncomfortable silence filled the room until my father finally spoke. Why did you not tell us? All this time we thought... You thought what, Dad? I asked calmly. that I was wasting my potential, that I would never amount to anything in the NSA, that I was hiding from real competition. You let us believe you were nothing, Susan snapped, her voice sharp. Was this all a game to humiliate us? I quoted their various dismissals over the years without raising my voice. We did not know, my mother interjected. How could we know if you never told us? I sent you invitations to every promotion ceremony, I replied. I called after each new assignment. I emailed articles when my work was declassified enough to be recognized publicly. You ignored every one, I added, my tone steady but pointed. You chose to see only what fit your narrative. But a senior operative, my father said, still struggling with the concept. That is a very high rank. Yes, I confirmed. It is equivalent to a corporate vice president, approximately. This comparison landed exactly as I expected, causing both my father and brother to sit up straighter. And you have authority over our contract? Michael asked, his tone accusatory. You've been sabotaging my work, he accused, his voice rising. Those rejections, those were you? Is that why you came home now, to ambush us and embarrass me in front of Catherine? I came home because it has been 7 years, and despite everything, you are my family, I replied evenly. The timing with the contract review was coincidental, though admittedly convenient. Convenient, my father repeated bitterly. You show up at my workplace in attire without warning. You made a fool of me, he added, his voice cracking. I'm my own daughter and I had no idea. Do you have any idea how this looks? People will think I use nepotism to get my daughter assigned to our project? I had to laugh at that. Dad, I have spent my entire career avoiding any connection to your company, precisely to prevent that perception. Chief Carter assigned me to this project because of my expertise in adaptive counterintelligence systems and my record with similar implementations. I earned this, I said, locking eyes with each of them. Not because of you, but despite you. Chief Carter, my mother asked. My mentor and commanding officer, I explained. She has been what you could have been all these years, supportive, challenging when necessary, proud of my accomplishments. The words hit home, and I saw my mother flinch. So this was all about showing us up, Michael demanded, making us look foolish for not believing in your NSA career. No, I said firmly. This was about my duty. You just happened to be in the room when I did it. This was about doing my job. The job I have trained for, sacrificed for, and excelled at. The fact that you never took it seriously is not my responsibility. My father stood up, anger finally breaking through his shock. You could have warned us. You deliberately let us go on believing you were still some junior operative, pushing papers somewhere. Would you have listened? I shot back. You never did before. Why would this time be different? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. When have any of you ever shown genuine interest in my career? Last night at dinner, not one of you asked me a single substantial question about my work or life. It was all about Michael's promotion and Jessica's condo. The truth of this statement hung in the air between us. We always wanted what was best for you, my mother said weakly. No, I corrected her. You wanted control. You wanted me to be someone else. You wanted what you thought was best for me. You wanted me to follow the path you understood and valued. When I chose differently, you decided my choice was invalid, rather than considering that I might know what was right for my own life. My father sank back into his chair, the anger deflating. Your brother followed the plan. He is doing well. I am happy for Michael, I said sincerely. But that was never going to be my path. I needed something, and I found it, I added, my voice steady. I found purpose you never understood. Michael uncrossed his arms, his defensive posture softening slightly. All these years we thought you were just stuck, going nowhere. I know what you thought, I replied. You made it abundantly clear every time we spoke. You will never be anything in the NSA. Those were your exact words last night, Mike. He had the decency to look ashamed. I did not know. You never asked, I pointed out. None of you did. You mocked me instead. I said, my voice low but cutting. And now you're answering to me. My mother stood up suddenly, her expression shifting. Well, now we know. And of course we are very proud indeed. I always told your father that the NSA was a respectable career. The revisionist history was so typical that I almost smiled. Mum, please do not do that. Do not pretend you have been supportive all along. It diminishes any chance of honest reconciliation. Her mouth opened and closed, unaccustomed to being directly contradicted. We didn't mean to hurt you, she stammered, but I held her gaze, unyielding. Emma, my father said, using my name instead of my rank for the first time since the meeting. What do you want from us now? An apology? Public recognition? What I have always wanted, I replied simply. Respect for my choices. Acknowledgement that my path, while different from what you planned, has value and meaning. That is all I have ever asked for. And honesty, I added. No more pretending I'm less than I am. The room fell silent again as they absorbed my words. Finally, my father stood and approached me. For a moment, I thought he might try to hug me, but he stopped and extended his hand formally instead. Operative Thompson, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I owe you an apology, a significant one. We were wrong, he added, his eyes meeting mine. I see that now. You're extraordinary. I failed to recognize your achievements and dismissed your career out of ignorance and prejudice. I was wrong. The formality of his approach was so characteristic of him, yet the admission was entirely new. I accepted his handshake. Thank you, Dad. I still do not understand everything about what you do, he continued. But I want to, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I want to know my daughter. But I would like to learn if you're willing to teach me. It was more than I had expected, and I felt something tight inside my chest begin to loosen. I would like that. My mother approached next, less comfortable with direct apologies. We should have come to your ceremonies, she said instead. We missed so much, she whispered, tears in her eyes. I don't know how to fix that. I would have liked to see you recognized. It was as close to an apology as she could manage at the moment, and I accepted it with a nod. Michael remained by the window, clearly struggling internally. Finally, he spoke. So, you outrank me by a lot. This is not a competition, Mike, I said. It always has been, though, he replied with surprising insight. I was wrong to make it one, he admitted, his voice low. You're incredible. Mum and Dad set us up that way from the beginning. I just had the advantage of following the path they already approved of. It was the most honest thing my brother had said to me in years. We chose different paths. Both have value. He nodded slowly. For what it is worth, what I saw in that meeting today, I could never do what you do. I underestimated you, he added, meeting my eyes. I won't again. The technical knowledge alone, not to mention the leadership presence, it was impressive. Really impressive. Coming from Michael, this was equivalent to a full prostration and apology. I felt the last of my defensive walls begin to lower. Thank you. My father cleared his throat. Catherine wants to have dinner tonight with all of us now that she knows we are family. She couldn't stop talking about you, he added, a hint of pride in his voice. You've changed everything, Emma. She is quite impressed with you, Emma. I know, I said simply, allowing myself a small smile. Of course, you know, my father replied, shaking his head with what looked like newfound respect. You probably know more about this company's operations than I do at this point. Only the classified parts, I said, and was rewarded with a genuine laugh from him. The first real connection we'd shared in years. You're full of surprises, he said, almost admiringly. Perhaps the first we had shared in years. The tension in the room had transformed into something different, something tentative but hopeful. There was damage to repair, years of dismissal and hurt to work through. But for the first time, I felt that my family was seeing me, truly seeing me. I have another meeting to get to, I said, glancing at my watch. But I'll see you tonight, I added, my tone softer. We have a lot to talk about. But I would be happy to join you all for dinner with Catherine tonight. As I turned to leave, my mother called out, Emma, she struggled to find the words. I know, Mum, I said gently, one step at a time. I closed the door behind me, leaving my family to process the new reality. Their daughter, their sister, was not nothing after all. She was a force, and they'd finally seen it. I walked away, my heart lighter, ready for the next challenge. She was Operation Emma Thompson, and she had earned every inch of the respect she now commanded. 8 months later, I hosted my family for dinner at my Seattle apartment. The spacious 3-bedroom condo overlooking the Sound was a far cry from my childhood home in Idaho, but it had become my sanctuary over the past few years. My family arrived, their faces a mix of awe and uncertainty, still adjusting to the new dynamic we'd forged. The changes in our family dynamic were still evolving, but progress was undeniable. My father, Robert, arrived first, carrying a framed news article about the successful implementation of Project Sentinel and my role in it. He had it professionally mounted and had been proudly displaying it in his office. I thought you might want a copy for your wall as well, he said, somewhat shyly. It's not every day your daughter makes headlines, he added, his voice warm with pride I'd never heard before. The article featured a photo of me in attire, alongside Chief Sarah and Catherine Reynolds at the project launch. Thank you, Dad. That is thoughtful, I replied, genuinely touched by the gesture. 8 months ago, he would have considered such agency recognition irrelevant. My mother, Susan, arrived with a homemade cherry pie, my childhood favourite. I made it just like you used to love, she said, her smile, tentative but sincere, a far cry from her dismissive tone last year. Her attempts at connecting were still awkward but sincere. She had stopped making comparisons between me and Mike or Jessica, instead asking genuine questions about my work, at least the unclassified parts. Your apartment is lovely, Emma, she commented, looking around at the minimalist but elegant decor. It suits you, she added, her voice softer. Strong, purposeful. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. So neat and organised. Agency. Precision, I joked, and she actually laughed, instead of using it as an opportunity to criticise my career choice. Michael and Laura arrived last, bringing an expensive bottle of wine. The most surprising transformation had been in my brother. After the initial shock wore off, he had approached me with genuine curiosity about my work and career path. I brought your favourite vintage, he said, grinning. Figured I owe you after that meeting. So, he began, as we sat in the living room before dinner. I implemented those security protocols you suggested last month. The team thought I was a genius for coming up with them. I raised an eyebrow. Did you give credit where it was due? He grinned sheepishly. Eventually, after enjoying the praise for about 5 minutes. You're learning, I teased, and he laughed, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. But seriously, the implementation has been smooth. The client is impressed. Good work, I said sincerely. Your team executes well. This simple, professional acknowledgement meant more to him now than any familial platitude ever had. He had started seeing me as a colleague worthy of respect, not just his little sister. My father, who had been examining the agency awards displayed modestly on my bookshelf, turned to me. These are incredible, he said, touching a medal. We should have celebrated these with you. I read that article about the cyber attack you helped prevent last year. I did not understand all the technical details, but it sounded significant. It was, I confirmed. We caught it early, which was fortunate. Lives were at stake, he asked, beginning to grasp the importance of my work. Potentially, yes. Infrastructure security affects everyone. He nodded thoughtfully. I'm starting to see that, he said, his voice earnest. You're saving lives, Emma. I always thought agency service was about field operations. I never considered the cyber battlefield. Most people do not, I acknowledged. That is partly why we can be effective. Enemies do not always see us coming. The doorbell rang, and I excused myself to answer it. Chief Sarah Carter stood in the hallway, her attire as impeccable as always despite her off-duty status. "Ready to charm your family?" she asked with a wink, her presence a reminder of my strength. "Operative Thompson," she greeted me with a warm smile. "Chief," I returned the greeting. "Thank you for joining us tonight." I had invited Sarah to dinner partly because she was in town for meetings, but also because I wanted my family to meet the woman who had believed in me when they had not. "Everyone," I announced as we returned to the living room. "This is the woman who saw what I could be," I said, introducing Sarah with pride. My family stood, visibly impressed. "This is Division Chief Sarah Carter, my commanding officer and mentor. Sarah, this is my family." My father stood immediately, extending his hand with the respect he would show any high-ranking corporate executive. "Chief Carter, it is an honor. I understand we have you to thank for recognizing Emma's potential." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "The potential was always there, Mr. Thompson. I simply provided the opportunities for it to flourish, and she seized them," Sarah added, glancing at me with pride. My mother bustled forward. "Chief, please make yourself comfortable. Dinner is almost ready." As we moved to the dining table, the conversation flowed more naturally than any family gathering I could remember. Sarah shared stories about agency life that helped my parents understand the world I inhabited, while carefully avoiding classified details. Emma designed a simulation program that is now standard training for all counterintelligence personnel, she told them over the main course. Her approach reduced successful breach attempts in training scenarios by 70%. Beat. "That's my sister," Michael said, surprising me with a grin. I watched my parents absorb this information, saw them truly hearing about my accomplishments, perhaps for the first time. "We did not know," my mother said quietly. "All these years we did not know what you were really doing." "You never asked," I replied, but without the bitterness that would have coloured those words 8 months ago. "But you're here now," I added, offering a small olive branch. Susan's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability showing. "But now you know, and that is what matters." After dinner, Michael helped me clear the dishes while our parents continued talking with Sarah. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent years thinking I was ahead of you in the game of life, getting promotions, climbing the corporate ladder, making connections, but you were playing an entirely different game at a much higher level." "I was blind," he admitted, his voice raw. "I'm sorry, Am, you're the real deal." "It was never a competition, Mike," I reminded him. "I know that now," he acknowledged, "and I am sorry for making it one." These moments of genuine connection would have seemed impossible during that painful family dinner 8 months ago. The healing was not complete, perhaps would never be fully complete, but it was real progress. Later, as we enjoyed coffee and my mother's cherry pie, my father raised his glass in a toast to Emma, he said, his voice strong. "Our daughter, who showed us what true success looks like." "Said to operate Emma Thompson," he said, his voice carrying an unmistakable note of pride, "who proved that following your own path can lead to extraordinary places. We may have been slow to see it, but we could not be prouder now." I raised my glass along with the others, feeling a sense of peace I had not experienced in my childhood home for many years. Sarah squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "You did it, Emma. They see you now." I nodded, my heart full. The validation I had once desperately sought from my family no longer defined me. But their recognition was still healing. In the end, it was never about proving them wrong. It was about becoming who I was meant to be, whether they approved or not. That they had finally come to respect my choices was not the victory. The victory was mine, forged through years of grit and triumph, and no one could take that away. The victory had been in making those choices for myself all along. So what about you? Have you ever had your achievements dismissed by people who should have supported you? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and triumph. Remember to share with anyone who needs to be reminded that sometimes the best validation comes from proving yourself on your own terms. Thank you for listening, or to my American audience, thank you for watching. And remember, your path is valid, even when others fail to see its value.